Hi, I'm Emily and this is Made on Mill. In this video, I'll be showing you how to put together a scrap yarn vest. The full written pattern for this scrap yarn vest is available on my website, which is madeonmill.com, and I will link that down below in the description box. So to get started, this is what the finished granny square looks like. So we have a center here with a 7-loop puff stitch, and then the rest of the stitches are double crochet or half double crochet. For mine, I decided to do 2 different squares, so the pattern is the same. I just alternated the 2 center colors to have a little bit of variance between the squares. For this project, I primarily use cotton yarn. So I had found this at the thrift store. I have this on hand, just some leftover from another project that I used. Then I believe this is Wool and the Gang's Shiny Happy Cotton. I only have a little bit left, which I will use to show you how to make the last square with, but this is another color so you can get a better look at it. I found this yarn at a thrift store this past winter. I think it is like an alpaca or wool blended with some synthetic material. I'm not sure, but if you look at it, it is a little bit heavier than a worsted, but I still would count this as a worsted weight. So they are all worsted weight or weight for yarns. In addition to your yarn, you will need a yarn or tapestry needle, scissors, and a 5mm crochet hook. One other thing I wanted to note about this project is it is completely size inclusive. So you will just need to make as many squares as you need based on your size and the design that you want for your vest. Now, in terms of how much yarn you need, that's a little bit difficult to say just because I don't know what size you'll be making. I roughly had about this much yarn of the purple here, and I am making a size small. This is for my friend. So I would say this is a size small. So I have listed on my website the approximate yarn lengths that you will need. So for the interior color, about 150 meters. For color B, which is the second one here, you'll need 150 meters. Color C, you will need 170 meters. And then color D, you will need 220 meters. So that's the outside here, and that's also the color I'll be using to do the trim. So around the armholes, neck hole, and the band around the waist. If you don't have a lot of the same color of scraps, for instance, then I would take a lot of your scraps and kind of arrange the colors. So here I'm only using 4 colors, but you could use perhaps 8 or even 12 colors and have 3 or more different granny squares that you're making. Another suggestion is something like this that I had in my stash. This is something I could easily purchase more of. So if you really want to stick with a certain color, make sure it's a yarn you could get again, whereas this yarn I thrifted, but I was able to get quite a bit of it, and so I wasn't too worried about that. Now, if you're wanting to use a different weight yarn or different like texture of yarn, I don't know how the pattern will work out for that, but when you're making your granny squares and you're finding that they're not sitting flat, and it's because you used perhaps like a different hook size or a different yarn, what you can do to adjust that is anywhere where there's a chain space, you can either drop or add chains to allow for your squares to sit flat. So those are my tips on how to modify this pattern a little bit to customize it to what will work best for you. Start with our first color, which I'm calling color A, and you will begin by working a magic knot. then you will, or sorry, a magic ring, and then you will chain 2. Now, working in our magic ring here, we will work a 7 loop puff stitch. So to work a 7 loop puff stitch, you will yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, then yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop. Then you will count that you have 7 loops on your hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then you will pull up a loop and pull through all 7 loops on your hook. Now I will chain 3 and repeat that 3 more times. Then you'll work a final chain 3. And then I like to hold my work here while I tighten the magic ring so it's really snug, and then move that tail out of your way. Now to close up this round, we will slip stitch in the top of the initial chain 2 that we made, or the top of your puff stitch, wherever you can find a spot. Oops. Okay, and then I like to chain 1 to make sure it's very secure. Then you can go ahead and trim your tail here and we will fasten off. So to start on round 2, we will work with color B, so your second color, which, since we're doing this granny square here, is my green color. So you'll begin by making a slip knot and then putting that on your hook. Now you will find one of the chain 3 spaces or one of the corners and you'll slip stitch into that. I like to find one that doesn't have a tail. I just find it easier to weave in my tails later on when they're not all in the same spot. Plus it will reduce a bit of bulk that is caused by weaving in tails. Okay, so we'll work a slip stitch into the chain 3 space. Then we will chain 2 and work 2 double crochets. Right, so that's what that's looking like. Then we will chain 2 and work 3 double crochets, all in that chain 3 spot that we have been working into. You will chain 1 and then you'll skip over this puff stitch and begin working in that chain 3 space again. You will start by working 3 double crochets, chain 2, and then working 3 double crochets again. Okay, so you can start to see this taking shape. Now that initial chain 2 that we made does count as a double crochet. So you will continue working this around. So you'll chain 1, skip your puff stitch, and then work 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets, all in that chain 3 space. I'll meet you at the end. I've just worked that final corner space here. Now I will chain 1 and I will slip stitch into the initial chain 2 space. so you can try to grab some of the chains to work into, but I actually just like to go in between the chain 2 and that double crochet. I just insert my hook there and work a slip stitch plus a chain 1 to make sure that is secure. Now we will fasten off. So that is how round 2 is looking. Now you can begin to work over some of your tails, which I have done here, but I still really highly recommend weaving the tails in very securely after. It does take a lot of time, but just do it while you're watching TV or whatever other hobby that you have that you can do this during. But since this is a garment and will be washed, I just want to make sure those tails are really secure when we weave them in. I'll show you how to do that at the end. To begin round 3, again, we will start with a slip knot on our hook, and we will work a slip stitch into one of the corners. So the corners is that chain 2 space between the 3 double crochet clusters. Okay, so we will slip stitch there. Oops. And then chain 1. So we will still be working in this chain 2 space. We will start with 1 half double crochet, followed by chain 2, and then 1 half double crochet. Right? Now when we work along the side of the granny square here, we are going to work in between stitches. So usually if you were working in this stitch, you would grab these 2 loops, right? But we are going to find the space in between the double crochets, and I'll pull that apart there so you can see. And so this is where you want to put your hook. Whoops. So we will work 5 half double crochets across. So there's 1 and 2. Then we'll work in that chain 1 space for the 3rd, and then in between the double crochets for the 4th and 5th half double crochet. Now in this corner, we will work a half double crochet followed by a chain 2, and then a half double crochet in that corner space. Then to work along the side, we will work those 5 half double crochets. So working the first 2 between the double crochet stitches from the previous round, the 3rd in that chain 1 space, and then the 4th and the 5th between the double crochet stitches. Now we're at the corner again, so we'll work 1 half double crochet followed by chain 2 and 1 half double crochet. So you will repeat this around, and I will meet you at the end. I wanted to make a note here that when you get to that chain 2 that we made when we started round 2 here, that counts as a double crochet. So you will just work your 4th half double crochet in between that chain 2 and double crochet space. Now the beginning is a little bit tricky because we had to do a slip stitch and that chain 1. So when you go to close off this round, you will slip stitch in the top of that half double crochet that you made there, and then chain 1 like I have been doing to fasten off. Then you can pull that tightly. So that is how round 3 is looking. So to work round 4, you will grab the color you want to use. I'm using this white color here. Okay, so you again will make a slip knot, and then you will make a slip stitch into the chain 2 corner space. And then pull that tight to secure it. So you start by chaining 3, and this does count as a double crochet. Now working in this chain 2 space, I will work 1 double crochet, then I will chain 1 and work 2 double crochets. Now we will work a double crochet in between the first and second half double crochet. So similar to how I working last round in between stitches rather than on top, we will do that same way here. So getting in between those stitches and working a double crochet. Now we will chain one, we will skip this space here, and we will work in the third space. So between the third and fourth half double crochet, you will work a double crochet. Now we will work a double crochet on top of that fourth half double crochet. So you need to pull this double crochet work kind of out of your way like that. And then you will need to grab those 2 stitches and work a double crochet. So you should have the back bump of that half double crochet here below your work. Not sure if you can see that very well, but we'll go over that again once we get to the next side. Then you will work a double crochet again in between the 4th and 5th half double crochet from the previous row. So you're kind of creating a 3 double crochet cluster here. Now I will chain 1, skip this space, and you will work in between the last 2 half double crochets. You'll work 1 double crochet. Now in the corner, we'll work 2 double crochets, followed by a chain 1, and then 2 double crochets. Now we won't chain 1 here. We immediately work a double crochet in between the first space here. Then we chain 1, skip this space, and in this space in between these half double crochets, you will work a double crochet. Then you work a double crochet on top of the 4th half double crochet of the previous round. 1, 2, 3, 4. This one will pull our work out of the way and work that half double or that double crochet. Then we work a double crochet in the next space and chain 1. Then we skip this space and work a double crochet in the last space. Okay, now at the corner again, 2 double crochets, followed by a chain 1 and 2 double crochets. Okay, we are going to continue with that, but we are going to come up to where our join was of the last round. So I'm going to show you how to work your stitches there. So this is like our slip knot or a slip stitch, sorry, and the chain 1 here. And it does create quite a bit of bulk, but we'll just need to work around it. So there are 2 options of how you can do this. You will work your last, your last double crochet of this cross section before the corner. So you'll work that between your 4th and 5th half double crochet, and I worked that before the slip knot and chain 1, or slip stitch and chain 1. Okay, so now what you can do is immediately jump to the corner here and work your double crochet, or you can work your first double crochet in between this and then your 3rd in the corner. So I will show you both ways. So if you decide to work in between these stitches to sort of spread it out, that's an option. And then you would just work 1 double crochet in the corner, followed by your chain 1 and then your 2 double crochets. Right, so that is how that would look here. Now, if we were I guess, following this more properly, we've worked that last double crochet of the side, and then we would immediately jump to working in the corner. So we would ignore that slip stitch and chain 1, and we would just work our 2 double crochets in the corner, followed by chain 1 and 2 double crochets. So that's how that looks if you do it that way. I will leave it up to you. You can decide which way works better for you. So when we get to the end, you will work that last double crochet of the side in between that last 2 half double crochets like normal. And then we are finished. So then we simply just slip stitch in between the chain 3 and first double crochet, like so. And then I chain 1 to make sure it's really secure. Now, there are multiple ways you can finish the last stitch of your granny square. There's tons of different ways online, so I will leave that up to you. So if we look at our finished granny square here, you can tell where that finish is, but once we stitch these together, it shouldn't be very visible. All right, so we will fasten that off. And that is how the granny square is looking. So at this point, you can go ahead and weave in your ends. I will show you briefly how I do that. And then if you like, you can block your squares. I don't block them. I'll leave that up to you whether you block them or not. But I want this vest to have a very like lived in feel, very comfortable, kind of like scrunched up and not perfectly smooth. So therefore I don't think blocking is necessary for the look that I'm going for. One other thing I want to note is when you're joining each new round, make sure the right side is facing you. Yeah, you don't want to be flipping back and forth, so your tail should be on the reverse side. So to weave in your tails, I will show you how I have been doing this. Okay, let's work on this one here to begin. Okay, so you can see where that's coming from there. I like to skip over that so that I don't undo any stitches, and then you just go through the base of these double crochets like this. Pull that through. Then since I came under this one, I'm going to go over that loop so that I kind of hook it in so my yarn can't be pulled back through. Then I work it through, and then I try to work it through this chain or this slip knot, sorry. I kind of push it through the center of that. Since it's a very tight stitch, it should hold that tail securely. And then I just go ahead and trim it. And that's all there is to it. Now, the center ones are a little bit different. So it's coming out from this side, right? This is the end of the magic ring tail. I will send it through here. Again, I will try to catch a loop. So whatever loop I came under, I will now go over as I go back through. And then I will try to catch a few stitches. And you can work your way back up. And sometimes you can push it through a strand of yarn, and that also will make it secure. Okay, so that's kind of how I've been weaving in the ends. Now for this one at the top here, you will just weave it in the best you can to tuck it in and camouflage it as best that you can. Now, once your granny squares are complete, you will go ahead and sort of generally start laying them out to see how many you need. Okay, so for example, for this one, I know I'm doing for a height of 4. So what I like to do with my strand of yarn is at least, you know, bring it off the bottom a little bit, extend it past, and then make sure that it is at least double the length and a little more of the height of squares. Then I find that should be enough to weave them together. You have your 2 squares and the right sides are facing up, and you can see your double crochets from the last round here. Okay, you can see those stitches. So now I'm going to put them with their wrong sides facing and align those side seams so we can really see those stitches along the top here. So you are going to work on the back loops only. So that means these loops here. So start by bringing your work from underneath. So this is that corner stitch. We're grabbing the back loop. We will pull the yarn under and we'll leave, I don't know, about a 4-inch tail. Right. Then you will jump into your next stitch, grabbing the back loop, and you'll go directly across and grab that back loop as well. When we go to weave in this end, we can grab that. Now again, we work across on the same square to grab the next loop, and then directly across we grab that loop. So you're wanting to make sure your squares are aligned so that the same stitches are lined up here and that you're not offsetting them. So that's all there is to it, is grabbing the back loops and weaving back and forth. The vest has been assembled, so I have stitched all my granny squares together and this is how it's looking. For the top here, this is the neck opening. I decided to have a square neck at the front here and then add a square at the back so that across the back of the neckline it would be straight. Now this is a bit of a smaller hole for a head, so just make sure you're trying it on to make sure it fits. Now this armhole is completed, so that's what it looks like. I did create these little corner pieces which I will go over with you, but that just fills in the corner space that sits here so that you can get a more rounded underarm. Yeah, you can just round out the underarm portion of the vest. Now for the bottom, I have started working on the band, which I will also walk you through. So for the bottom band, what I did was I worked single crochets in each stitch around. Now, because we did the invisible join when we joined the granny squares together, you can kind of see like the ridge line of the double crochets, like of that top stitch. So I thought for the bottom, when I worked my single crochets, I would work in the back loops only. So you can see that here, these are my single crochets, and you can see I worked in the back loops only so that I could kind of keep that continuation of the ridging along the bottom as well. Now when I did the bands, I also worked my slip stitches into the back loops of the single crochets as well. So to do this, you will simply slip stitch anywhere in the top of your granny square, and then you will work a single crochet in that same spot you slip stitched. Then you will work a slip stitch, or a single crochet in each stitch around. So I have this granny square here, and I want to very quickly show you that you will start in these corner stitches. So you'll find one there. So across the side of your granny square, you will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 stitches. Now, when you are working those in between two granny squares, it can be difficult to find those corner stitches because we joined the granny squares together along this side through those corner stitches. So just make sure you're pulling your work apart and finding that corner stitch and making sure you work a single crochet in there. Now for the bands and the underarm and the neck hole, I went down a hook size to a 4.5 millimeter, just so it kind of pulls it in a little bit and works like a band. So for the bottom, once you work your single crochets around, you will slip stitch in the top of your first single crochet, and then what I did was I chained 10 because I have 9 single crochets in the band. You can completely customize the height of your band based on your personal preference. So I started with a chain of 10, and then I worked 9 single crochets back down that chain, and then I slip stitched into the next 2 single crochets along the bottom here. So I will show you where I'm at here. I have worked 9 single crochets, and now I am back at the bottom of my band. So this is the single crochet we slip stitched into last time, so I won't stitch into that one. I will find the next one, and I am working in the back loops. You can work in both loops, it's up to you. So I'll work 2 slip stitches. We do not chain here, we just simply turn our work. Now those 2 slip stitches that you just made, 1, 2, you will skip those, and then you will work your single crochets back up the length of the band. And make sure you are working the same number each time depending on the height you have chosen for your band. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now at the top here, we will chain 1, turn our work, and work 9 single crochets back down, working in the back loops only. Working in the back loops only gives us the ridging effect that you can see here. All right, so we are back down to the bottom of the vest. Again, making sure we don't work in that space that we slip stitched into last time. We will work a slip stitch into the next 2 spaces. Okay, then you will skip those 2 slip stitches and then work your way back up with single crochets in the back loop only. Now I want to show you how I worked the little corner pieces that I created to go here where the chest meets the underarm portion. So I will have this on my website, the full written tutorial, but I'm gonna walk you through it here. Okay, so we start with a magic ring. You don't need a very long tail to start. Okay, then we will work 2 chains in the magic ring. We will work 1 double crochet, chain 1, then work 2 double crochets, then we will chain 2, work 2 double crochets, chain 1, followed by 2 double crochets. Okay, so that is the first round. Now you can tighten your magic ring slightly, but as you can see from the finished one here, we are leaving it kind of open a bit. I'll show you how to neaten that up once we sew it on. So now moving on to round 2, we will chain 2. Now we will skip the first stitch here because this chain 2 counts as a double crochet, and we will work a double crochet in the next stitch. Now in this chain 1 space, we will work 2 double crochets. Then we will chain 1, and we will skip these 2 stitches and work 3 double crochets in the chain space. then we will work chain 1 and another 3 double crochets within that chain space that we have been working in. Okay, so we will chain 1, then we will skip these 2 double crochets and find that chain 1 space, and in here you will work 2 double crochets, and then we will work a double crochet in the next 2 stitches. So 1 double crochet, and then the last one you will work on top of that initial chain 2, since that counts as a double crochet. Okay, at this point you will fasten off and leave a decent size tail, since we will use this to stitch it on to the vest. So this is the corner. Depending on how you have set up your vest, like how you've put it together in the shape of it, you may need more than 4. However, for mine, I only needed 4. I will not be putting any of the corner pieces in the neck hole here. Instead, I will show you how to work a band there. This is the right side of the vest facing us, and we want to put the corner piece on with the right side facing, which means we will need to flip it over so right sides are facing to stitch it on. Now, there is that center chain space which should align with the center corner of the vest here. So then what I do is I hold that there and I pivot over and swing it to see where that kind of lands. So it lands about there. We will use the invisible join method as we have been doing with the granny squares. So to start, I will take it and go into the back loop of the granny square. Then I come back through, and I like to go through that same spot there just to make sure it's secure. Then I will jump over to the next space on the corner piece and back over to the same spot on the granny square. I found that my stitches were closer together for the corner piece, so some of them I have doubled up. So as you can see, I just came out of this spot on the granny square, but I'm going back into it as I stitch along. It doesn't need to be perfect, just make sure it's secure, sitting generally flat, and there are no large holes. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now we're finding that corner spot. So we will come up through here and then grab that chain space. Okay, now for the other side, I find you can just pull this over like that and then work that side. And then at the end, because you'll have that chain space or that chain at the bottom here, it can be kind of difficult to find where to stitch that in, but just make sure you are also accounting for that. Okay, now it's stitched on. So this is when I like to flip the work so the wrong side is facing me, and then I'll weave in my ends to make sure they're nice and secure. So that's how it looks in the corner there. Now for the tail that's coming out of that magic ring, we can tighten it up. Once this is attached to the vest, I found it was easier to do it that way. So again, going to the wrong side of the work, I'll go back through that magic ring and just make sure that it is secured. So here is our underarm space, and these are the 2 columns of granny squares that sit under the underarm. So this is the center of the underarm. So I found it was easiest to join in that center space there. Remember, we are working in the back loops only. So what I did to start was a slip stitch somewhere in the center. Then in that same space, you'll work a single crochet. Now working the back loops across, we will work a single crochet in each stitch. For the corner pieces, I will show you how we do that just to kind of smooth out those sharp angles. So as I'm approaching the corner piece here, I can see that it has been stitched into this stitch here, which means I have one stitch left on my granny square that I haven't worked into. So I will skip that and I will find a space on the side of the corner piece and I will work a single crochet there. So what this is doing is pulling the work up towards the corner piece and making a smooth transition. Then continue to work single crochets evenly spaced across the corner piece here. You want your spacing to be similar to the stitch spacing on the granny squares. I am approaching the other side now. I will skip this one, I'll skip this one here, and then I'll directly work into this one. Right? So that to me is a little bit too big of a space. So I will work another single crochet in the side of the corner piece here. Then I will skip that stitch and go back over. There we go. That is sitting nicely. So now just continue working single crochets in each back loop across each granny square around, remembering how to do those corner pieces. Right. I have worked my way around and we are back at the start here of the single crochets. So I've worked my last single crochet here and I will simply slip stitch into the first single crochet that we made. Now this is where we will start the band. So you will need to decide how thick you want your band. So here I have elected to do a height of 3 single crochets. And if you remember the bottom band, I did 9. So the bottom band is theoretically 3 times the size of the underarm band. That may be something you want to consider if you're thinking about proportions. So to do that, we will chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we work in the back loops only. And so you'll find those back bumps and you'll work 3 single crochets back down, starting in the second chain from the hook. 2, 3. Okay, so we have worked in that first single crochet that we slip stitched into. Now we will work a slip stitch in the next 2 single crochets, and I am working in the back loops only to keep with the appearance of the invisible seam method that we have been using. Then I will work 3 single crochets back up the length of my band, chain 1 and turn, and then work 3 single crochets back down. So this is a pretty standard way to add band or trim to your crocheted garments. So what I did at these corner pieces to continue rounding them out is when I got close to them, I would see how many stitches were left. So I have worked back down the band and now I'm ready to slip stitch into the single crochets. So as you can see, these will be the 2 that I will work into. Now they're really close to the band. So what I did here was I actually slip stitched into 3. 2, 3. And this way we are kind of essentially skipping a stitch, which means we can pull our work in even more. So now we will turn, we will skip those 3 slip stitches and continue working our band as usual. Okay, now we are back down and working across the corner piece, so we will just work 2 slip stitches. I'm approaching the join here of the corner piece and the vest, so I've worked back down my band and now I'm ready to slip stitch. So we've already worked in this one, so we'll have these 2 to work into. Now since this is the join, I will work 3 slip stitches, 1, 2, 3, and then skip those 3 slip stitches and work our way back up. let's jump over and work on the neckline here. So I will be joining with a slip knot on my hook, and we will join with a slip stitch in the back here along the neck. So I will flip my work over. So I think I will do a band the same width as the underarm seams because I do have a smaller neck hole. So remember, the underarm and like around the shoulder, we chained an initial 4 to work 3 single crochets back down. So that's what I'm doing here. I've worked 4 chains, and now I will work 3 single crochets back down, starting in the second chain from the hook and working in those back bumps only. Okay, and then you know the drill. You will work a slip stitch into the next 2 stitches and work your way back up. So I'm approaching the corner here. Now we have the corner of this granny square, and this granny square to contend with. So I've worked my way back down, which then means I have 1, 2, 3 spaces left to the corner. So I will work, I'm going to do the 3 slip stitches like we did for the underarm. And this is to kind of pull our work in and make the band have a gentle curve. So work our way back up. I skipped those 3 slip stitches and we'll work our way back down. So let's find the next available stitch, which will be the corner of this one. So we will work a slip stitch there, then the corner of this one here, we'll work a slip stitch, and then we will work a 3rd slip stitch again to round out that corner and pull our band in. So I skipped those 3 slip stitches and worked 3 single crochets in the back loops back up my band here. Now that we've worked around that corner, I will continue working in the along the sides and only doing 2 slip stitches along the neckline here before I work my way back up. So I will continue working all the trim pieces of this vest, the neckline, underarms, and the bottom. Before I go, one other thing I need to mention is when you reach the end of where you're working your bands, you will simply just work slip stitches up the end of your band and where you started here. So we'll look at the neckline here. This is our initial chain. So when you come back around here, you will simply just work slip stitches in the back loops of both of your joins. Typically you want to work this on the inside of your work, but this one I worked on the outside and it's pretty much not noticeable whatsoever. But that's how you finish those up. Then of course weave in all your ends really well. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you liked this video, found it helpful, or inspired you to create your own scrappy yarn project, I would love it if you could give this video a like, subscribe, or share. Have a wonderful day.